let's talk about the feeling of self-doubt. I unfortunately know way too much about this feeling because I've felt it most of my life. I actually had a spirit guide visit me yesterday, and this would be a contract for hire spirit guide who's part of the collective teacher realm. And he came in and he had a lot to say about self-doubt. And so I'm going to just really quickly explain what who he is and what he just said. But his name is Harry Harlow. He was a famous psychologist, best known for his maternal separation, dependency needs, and social isolation experiments that he did with monkeys, which manifested into the importance of caregiving and companionship to social and cognitive upbringing, like development from a kid standpoint. And he was alive from 1905 to 1981. And he came in and he was so funny. Like I say, so funny, like, because he was like very stoic, but like he had a lot to say and he was very much so interested in observing. And I didn't know at first who he was until he started talking. And then I asked him further about like who the crap he was. So I have a paper here. I'm going to read you a little excerpt of what I wrote down about what he said. He said, self-doubt is a suction of dreams. It underlies fear in one's own abilities while serving as a reminder of the lack of trust found within. In order to relieve self-doubt, we must first understand the reason to which it has arrived. And then he kind of, went on to elaborate a lot more about what self-doubt feels like, and then how you can begin to combat those feelings. And so, in essence, obviously I needed that conversation yesterday. I am working through feelings of self-doubt. I struggle a lot, in a lot of areas, and I'm going to be the first to say that I'm not completely healed. I don't think that every single person on the planet, when they start doing, spiritual work or they start healing, the healer isn't ever fully healed. They kind of heal in the process of healing as well. And so I've done a lot of healing on my own, and then I've started working a lot with other people over the years. And so as I started healing myself, I began to help heal others. And then in the essence of that, I've healed a lot of deep wounds. Also therapy helped a lot. But anyways, the feeling of self-doubt is really us questioning our existing beliefs, thoughts, traditions, ideas, emotions, and even decisions that we make. And it's very difficult because it's really the essence of lacking confidence in your own abilities and what you're capable of. But it's not necessarily self-efficiency where it involves our expectations of how we perform in a certain domain. It's a little bit different because this is more of, like we kind of know who we are. We have a sense of individualism in that maybe we have an idea or thought about politics. Maybe we have thoughts thoughts about other things besides just politics. But there's this underwhelming feeling of not being competent enough for the task that you're going to perform. And so that's really where the self-doubt kind of comes in, and it can creep in, and it is a dream killer because people will hold back. Maybe they won't perform as well because they think they're not competent enough. Or maybe, if you can think about it, thousands of people feel this feeling of self-doubt each day. Can you imagine how many ideas that are like $1 million ideas that just go right out the window because that person did not feel competent enough to stand up and say what they wanted to say or do what they wanted to do? Or how many relationships never happened because a person didn't feel confident enough to be in that relationship? I mean, when you really think about it, it's kind of sad. But I'll give a couple examples of how self-doubt kind of has manifested in my world. I can procrastinate till the very last second. If I set a deadline for myself, I will procrastinate it till the very end. And the reason that I do that is almost kind of like a subconscious behavior. in essence, and it's something I'm working on solving because it doesn't help anything, but I will procrastinate till the last second so that if I fail at it, well, then I can sit back and go, well, it was a botch job anyways, because, I wasn't prepared and, I had to do it at the last second. Or here's another example. I'll become an overachiever. And for a number of years, I seriously went way too far with this. I mean, I was working 7 days a week, like literally destroying my body, trying to overachieve and overcompensate in areas where I felt like I was not competent enough. And even in the end, it didn't matter how good of a job I did or didn't matter how much I achieved. I still sat there thinking, oh man, I'm not worthy enough. And that led me to a whole nother kind of feeling, because it's a lack of self-worth. And then especially, in the spiritual community, I've felt the feeling of imposter syndrome. Well, I'm not really this person, or there's a million other me's out there. They can do it better than me. And I would come up with 1,000,001 reasons why I couldn't do a task. And it dried me up for a long time. I sat down and watched people kind of do things, get in relationships, watched people overcome a lot of things in their life and help so many people. And then I sat back and I couldn't do it. And I had gotten to a place in my healing journey where I had achieved a lot. I had really overcome a lot of feelings. I was getting more stabilized in my life. And then I knew I had to take some next steps. I knew it was time for me to kind of branch in to more of the spiritual profession that I really wanted to be doing. But in the back of my head, I thought, well, there's somebody else that could do it better. There's always someone else that can do it better. And, what is my niche? Well, somebody else has that niche. And it led me down a rabbit hole that was so overwhelming, and it made me spend a lot more time hiding than just being open and honest and vulnerable and in front of people. And I am so thankful that over the years I've had quite a few people come into my life and almost kind of Spartan kick me off of this self-doubt train. Because, you're on the same train, so like you're just basically, like if you think of a train track, like the tracks are already laid out, like you're following a certain guideline, you're going to do things a certain way. And then, in comes my mentors over the years, and they just Spartan kick me off of the self-doubt train, and I fall flat on my butt. And then I have to get back up and try to figure out what it is that I really think or believe, and how do I want to approach a certain situation. And it's been really hard over the years. It's something that I still struggle with. And part of that is perfectionism, because I'm thinking in my head, well, if I just follow this one standard and I abide by this high standard and I achieve this and this and this and I'm overachieving, well, then that'll make up for how I really feel. But the problem with that is that we start to develop this control issues. We start trying to control the narrative. We start trying to control people, places, and things. And while we're trying to do that, and then we're not doing that with evil intention. We're trying to just help people. But, we start trying to control. We're in essence, this is the illusion of control. When you're trying to control something, you are at the whim of that other thing or the mercy of that other outcome. And so because of that, you are in essence being controlled by what you're trying to control. And that I think is really fascinating, because it's the doggone truth. Like, you cannot escape that. When you are sitting here because you're in so much of a fear state, you don't want to lose your family member, or you don't want to, lose that job, or you don't want to lose the money that you have, or the house that you have, or whatever the case is, or the relationship that you have, you start getting control issues, okay? Because you're scared, and because you feel like you lack the competence to keep it too. Yeah, that's a thing. All of that comes out, and then the next thing you know, you're sitting there and you are at the very whim of what is going to happen, like the outcome. How is it, like, what's going to happen because you're trying to control that situation? What's the outcome of that? And I've met a lot of people like that. I've looked in the mirror a number of days and seen that. Oh man. So, how do you kind of combat self-doubt? Well, that's something that I've seen over the years in the spirit realm. I see a lot of dead people who passed away and they were in different states of self-doubt. And my gosh, like I even had my own experience with this, and we're going to talk about that in a second because my whole experience of self-doubt is one for the books. Okay. Not only did I have like living people that made me feel those feelings of self-doubt, and I did take away my own ownership and my own power and gave it over to them and blamed them for the problem, when in reality it was very much so me. We're going to talk about that. But the first thing I want to say though is when we're trying to overcome self-doubt, what we want to try to do is cultivate feelings of confidence. We also want to cultivate the feeling of self-worth, okay? Like feeling worthy of yourself. And we want to, in particular, not just self-worth, we want to cultivate the feeling of unconditional self-worth. And what does unconditional self-worth look like? Well, that means that you are not basing your self-worth on a particular outcome of whether or not you win a task or lose a task, or whether or not you achieve this or achieve that, or have this person or don't have this person. You are literally not in a state where you are looking for external factors to weigh out your self-worth. Self-worth, unconditional self-worth is so much deeper than that. That means that you have no condition to your own self-worth. So then if you have those feelings about yourself, then it won't matter if you achieve anything or don't achieve anything, because you value yourself regardless of those things. And so that's really the ultimate thing that we want to get to. Well, how do you get there? That's where people struggle, is they're like, well, that sounds really phenomenal, Brittany, but how do we get there? And really, I like to try to give you a rundown of different techniques that you can do. Mindfulness on a daily basis is really important, because if you are looking, and I'm not just talking about like meditation, but I'm talking about just daily mindfulness in the sense of observing your own behaviors, your own thought patterns, and kind of listening to that negative self-talk that you do on a daily basis. All of that stuff kind of gives you hints towards what is really going on, the deeper issues at hand. And if you think about the essence of feelings, feelings are not necessarily this horrible thing. People always talk about negative feelings. They want to get rid of the feelings and they just want to be happy. But in reality, the feelings are actually your alert system. So when you're feeling the feeling of self-doubt, it's alerting you to the essence of you having a lack of confidence in your own abilities. And that's not something that we should ever take lightly. It's an alert system, and there's nothing wrong with your feelings. We just need to learn how to work through those feelings so that we can shut that alert system down and then be able to bring in more love and compassion and happiness. But that doesn't mean that once you get to those states of love and happiness and compassion and joy, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have days where you have feelings of self-doubt that come up, or days that you have feelings of fear that comes up. That is natural. It's part of the human experience to have your alert system of feelings. And we're taught from a young age, depending on how you were raised and where you were, where you grew up. A lot of people, a lot of parents do not understand emotions or feelings, and they were raised by parents who didn't understand feelings or emotions. And then guess what? Everybody practices this horrible thing called emotional dysregulation. And I say it's horrible because it's the opposite of regulating your own emotions. So it's the opposite of being able to understand and acknowledge your feelings and then cope with those feelings in a healthy way. Dysregulation means that you freak out. Dysregulation means that you are not able to regulate the emotions that come in. So you're either going to avoid them, you're going to shut them down, and then they're going to boister up and then blow up and explode in front of you. Or it's going to lead to all kinds of health problems in the process, or disorders. That's another thing. When you get into a whole kind of another can of worms. I literally constantly am studying psychology terms, psychological techniques that can be used, and also the essence of what feelings really are, because I really strive for educating my clients while I'm, doing sessions with them. It's not just about reading them psychically or, talking to dead people or, multidimensional beings. I also want to kind of bring in the emotional awareness to help people, because the more aware we are of our emotions and our feelings and the cycles of behavior that we practice on a daily basis, the more that we can change and shift that energy. And so self-doubt is a really painful thing. It's a really difficult thing to work through. And when we're trying to really kind of begin to navigate through that, we want self-worth. So to cultivate self-worth, we have to have self-love. We have to find value in ourselves. So how do you cultivate self-love? Well, self-care is really important. And I'm not talking about just like, oh, I treat myself to the manicure place and I get my manicure every couple of weeks, Brittany, and then I go take myself out to the movies sometimes, and that's my self-care. No, I'm talking about like some daily routines, and you start with the basics. If you feel like you don't have self-care, you probably don't. So you start with the basics: food, water, shelter, sleep. Food, water, shelter, sleep. Are you drinking enough water today? Are you eating enough food today? What does your shelter feel like? Does it feel like home? How can you make it feel more like home? Then you start going on about your sleep. How can you sleep better? What can you do to cultivate healthier sleep habits? And then once you kind of get to that basis, then you can start kind of navigating into the more in-depth things of what self-care really is, which there's 3 pillars, as I call them. We have the emotional or mental self-care, which is all about your feelings and how you're regulating your feelings and coping with them in a proper, healthy way. Right down to, are you setting proper boundaries with the people, places, and things around you to cultivate a healthy, safe mental health environment? Is it mentally safe, in a nutshell? Then we also have physical self-care, which is, are you getting enough nutrition each day? Are you actually, eating healthier foods for yourself? Are you drinking the water? What is your, body feel like? Do you feel like you have a lot of health problems? How can you begin to heal your body through different medicines, or basically, are you going to the doctor? Are you going to the doctor when you need the doctor? Like when you need antibiotics, are you going to the doctor? Are you getting a wellness checkup? How's your teeth look? Are you getting a wellness checkup? How's your, female health or male health, whoever I'm talking to? How often have you gotten a colonoscopy? These are basic physical questions that I should be asking. Also, too, I can take that a step further. Are you driving the speed limit when you're driving? Do you wear a seatbelt on a daily basis? That stuff is also very, very important when we're talking about physical self-care, because if you love yourself and if you value yourself, you are less likely to take risks that are going to endanger your body. And that's really what we want to do, is what is risky behavior and how are we cultivating with healthy coping skills? And then the next thing is spiritual self-care. Spiritual self-care is basically mindfulness, meditation, maybe prayer, whatever it is for you that kind of is that spiritual side. Maybe it's religion or whatever the case is. I'm not going to judge anyone for that. It's what it is for you. Some people kind of come in and sit in a session with me and they only practice spiritual self-care. They're like, I talk to my spirit guides every day, and I pray and I do this and this and this and this, and I do meditation and I do some yoga. And yoga is great for mental, physical, and spiritual self-care, but it's not the only thing to do for self-care. You want to practice a lot of other things and kind of hone in on that particular pillar. Every single pillar, those 3 pillars, can really kind of cultivate a healthy awareness of your body. And when I talk about self-care, people get really overwhelmed really quickly, because they're like, Brittany, you don't understand. I got to take my kid to school. I have to pick my kid up from school. And in that time, I also have a job. I have to care for the chores of the house. I am a single mom. You have no idea what I'm going through. I got so many other things I got to worry about. I cannot possibly fit in 3 pillars of self-care. And I'm like, you kind of can do it all in one. on a daily basis. But you got to kind of start setting a routine because, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but your kids are going to grow up, okay? They are beautiful people. They are beautiful souls, and kids are karma. Just to like nail that in the coffin there. Kids are karma, and some of those karmas are really tough for a lot of people, okay? And some of them have a lot of karma. And so it's a lot to work through. And I get that you have responsibilities and obligations, but I have to stress here that while you are in charge of another human being, you also are in charge of your own health care. You are in charge of your own mental well-being. You are in charge of this bodysuit as long as you have a soul contract with your bodysuit. And that soul contract that you have with your bodysuit, it ends when you die. So, you got to start taking care of it somewhere. And what are you going to do? Wait till your kids get older? And then you're going to go through an identity crisis because of, you identified only with your children and your life was being a mom and you didn't know anything else besides being a mom. And then your kids grew up and they went off to college or they graduated high school and they started working and they moved out, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe they're still with you and you're holding on to it for dear life because, my God, that empty nest syndrome is going to kill you. And so a lot of people struggle when I start talking about, what to do for self-care. They get really overwhelmed really quickly by me saying that. But in the long term, your future self will thank you so much for taking care of yourself now. Because if you start practicing behaviors that are loving and kind and compassionate to yourself, you begin to value yourself on a different level. And when you start to appreciate this, the essence of you, then you can start really feeling comfortable making a decision. And you're not always going to feel comfortable with every decision, and you're not always going to have all the answers before making that decision. Sometimes you just got to take a step forward and have a leap of faith, so to speak, in what you're doing. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by leap of faith. When I was about 15 years old, 14 and a half going on 15, like days. Well, I was going to say days, but it's like months. So about 14 and a half, going on 15, I had worked up enough courage to tell on my mom for sexually abusing me. And I was scared. I was scared because everything that I had ever known up until that moment was a lie. It felt like a lie. And I didn't really know what I believed. My mom would tell me that I was stupid all the time. My mom would threaten me on a daily basis. And so I was pretty scared. By the time I got to the point where I was ready to tell on my mom, I had literally, I had gotten to such a place of courage where I was able to face that danger without being afraid of it, so to speak. I could be so scared, but look at that very essence of what could happen to me, and it completely underweighed what I really wanted to do, which was be free. I wanted to be free more than anything. And I think to that time when I was 14 and a half, and I was really what 14-year-old knows what they really want to be when they grow up, And at 14 years old, I was like, I can't do this. I don't know much of anything, but I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to keep doing this with my mama. And I remember the day that I actually told on my mom. It was July 26, 2009. It was that day exactly. I remember it clear as day. Still to this day, I still remember it. And yeah, I just gave away my age. But anyways, when I told on my mom, the moments leading up to it, it was not a good time. I had waited all day long. I made a decision that morning when I was in the shower that I was going to tell on my mom. And if I didn't, that I would end everything. There was no way I could survive this. She was going to either take my life or I was going to take my life, but I was not going to be able to survive it. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what's a good time to tell my dad? And I questioned myself all day long. And in the moment when I did actually tell on my mom, I remember so clearly, I was sitting in the living room and I was sitting on this brown leather couch, and it was the fabric of the leather. It was sticking to my thighs. Okay. I was sweating bullets, It was sticking to my thighs. I, was in my little t-shirt and underwear, and I was so scared, and my parents were upstairs screaming at each other, and my brother was in the middle of the argument because my brother said he wanted to go live with my Aunt Becky. And that's a side note. We don't need to talk about who Aunt Becky is. But anyways, so he's saying that he wants to go live with one of my aunts, okay? And my family is livid. They're just screaming at each other. My mom and dad are just screaming at each other. And at that moment, I was thinking in my head, this is a perfect time. There's never going to be a right time to do this. I'm just going to do it. And I remember I was shaking, like uncontrollably shaking. And I thought, there's no way that I can do this. There's no way I'm going to have the ability to overcome this feeling. There's no way I can do this. There's no way. There's just no way. And what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? What if what mom's doing is not really wrong? And I just told on her and, told her secret and, what's going to happen? But then the other part of me was thinking, I want to be free. I just want to be free. And so in this one little spurt of energy, I jolted off of the couch, barreled my butt up the stairs as fast as I could, almost slipping as I'm running up the stairs, and the carpet is green as grass, okay? Like this green grass, like carpet, ugliest carpet I've ever seen. Not to hate on the people that like to have that kind of carpet, but I was running up the stairs, and I tripped down the stairs a little bit, and I was going barreling up those stairs as fast as I could. I'm grabbing onto the walls as I'm running up the stairs because I'm going to go for it. I'm like jungle gymming it up there, I get all the way up there, and I am running at full speed towards my parents' bed, and on the bed is my brother, and I am running, and my parents are standing at the side of the bed screaming at each other still. They don't see me. My brother sees me, and he's like a deer in the headlights. He sees me coming in. I am like, tears are down my face. Snot is coming out of my nose. I've got, just what's the word? Saliva. I don't know why saliva is a hard word to remember. I've got saliva just dripping out of my mouth because I am beyond distressed. Okay. And I practically dive head first into the bed. I am full speed ahead, like a football player running towards someone with no fear in my eyes. I'm ready to just go. I'm ready to go. And so I jump into that bed, and my mom turns her awareness to me because she sees me, and I don't know why. It's like she knew. I don't know if my energy just spoke volumes to her, but she knew that I was about to say something. So she's grabbing hold of me, and my dad's standing there like a deer in the headlights. He doesn't know what to do. Total fright mode for him. And my brother's grabbing onto me and holding me as tight as he can. He's 2 years older than me. He's got a grip on me, a firm grip on my my shoulder, and he's pulling me towards him. And my mom has got my leg, and she's ripping my leg towards her. She's just gripping it, and she's trying to, with all her might, to shove me off of the bed and try to carry me down the stairs if she could. And I'm trying to kick her away. Okay, I'm scream crying, and I'm get away from me! Oh my God! And my dad is just standing there like a deer in the headlights, has no idea what's going on. My brother, he's screaming at my mother, and my mom is trying to talk in this sweet voice of let's go downstairs, Brittany, let's go downstairs. And she's got this death grip on me. And I remember sitting there being in a tug of war between my brother and my mother, and that very essence right there for me solidified more of my choice. I didn't know everything that I needed to know about me. I didn't need to know in that moment everything I needed to know about me. I was taking a leap of faith in myself and what I knew to be true about myself, which is I needed freedom. And so I'm in this tug of war. My dad then starts asking me, what is going on, Brittany? And he's all calm. And I'm over here, in this tug of war. And I'm Mom needs to leave the room. And I'm done crying at that point. I'm just sitting there being tugged back and forth by two different people. And I feel almost numb or disassociated from what's happening because it's too much for my little brain at that moment to understand. And so my dad begins to yell at my mother to go downstairs, and she's not going. And he starts shoving her down the stairs. And, she's just basically still trying to talk to me. And I am sitting there shaking uncontrollably, and I like, bring my legs up to my body and kind of like, cradle myself in my brother's arms. And my brother's like, it's going to be okay. And I'm like, I'm going to tell on mom. And he just kind of looked at me like a little bit puzzled, because I don't think he really knew what I meant. And my dad gets upstairs, and all I could get out to my dad is I started to cry, because I realized, oh my God, this is going to change everything. It's like I knew, I was so psychic already. I already knew, that my family wouldn't be in my life when I was an adult. I already knew that I was going to have to leave my family behind and be shunned. I already knew that what my mom was doing was wrong, and she was going to go to jail for it. But there was a part of me that was believing, I guess in some ways, maybe it wasn't true, and like trying to just not, I don't know, I guess I wanted to be fat, dumb, and happy. But I looked at my dad, and all I could get out was, mom is cheating on you with me. And I remember my dad just looking at me, and it was like this long look of, oh my God, what did she just say? And he just kind of just stared at me, and he said, what do you mean? And so then I began to kind of tell him a little bit, and I couldn't even get out very much. I got a couple of sentences out. And in that moment, my brother was gripping me as tight as he possibly could to kind of comfort me, because I was sobbing as I was saying it, because I had, up until that moment, my 14 years of existence, I had really done a good job with keeping secrets. I was a good liar. I was a good manipulator. I learned from my mother. And I was good at saving face. What happened behind closed doors, we didn't talk about it. And so to kind of say it all out loud, it was so overwhelming, but at the same time, so relieving, that I felt free already. Even though he didn't know what to do at that moment, I felt free. And so he looked at me, and he's like, okay, we're going to go to, your aunt's house, and blah, 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 blah. And he goes, without saying another word, he goes downstairs. And I'm thinking in my head, oh my God, what is he? Why is he going downstairs? She's going to talk him out of it. We're going to be gone. It's going to be over. Like, I'm going to get in so much trouble. She's going to snake her way out of this one. Like, I'm in so much trouble, and I'm shaking. He goes downstairs, and, later on I found out he gave my mom an ultimatum. He said, either you leave this house right now and you don't look back, or we're leaving this house right now. And if you intervene on anything, and if you even so much as look at Brittany, I'm going to call the police. And I remember my mom screaming at my dad downstairs, and then he comes like walking up the stairs, and he looks at me and he said, all right, I want you to walk in the middle of me and your brother. And he said, you hold our hands, and you do not look at anyone. It's like, you don't look at mom. So you don't respond to mom. You don't say anything. You just keep your head face down, and we're going to walk right out of here. And I remember that moment when we walked down the stairs, and my mom is already starting to scream at the top of her lungs, and she's trying to get my attention every which way. And I listened to my father in that moment. The one thing I ever listened to my dad at. I looked down, and I did not look back up. And I was just so focused on the floor. And in that moment, that distressing, traumatic moment, in my 14 years of life, I've experienced an ungodly amount of trauma. And it was at the hands of a woman who had birthed me into this world, the woman that I'm supposed to trust more than anything in this world. And so everything that I knew to be true up until that moment was a lie to me. And so how do you move forward with that? And that's what I spent a large part of my teenage years trying to discover. Well, actually avoid. I tried to avoid it a lot. But then even in my adult years, I've spent a long time working through what I believe and what I don't believe, and what is real and what is not real. And really trying to cope with the feelings that come in healthy ways. And it's been a interesting ride. I have this tattoo on my wrist. Literally the words courage are just on my wrist as a tattoo. And it's to remind me of those moments. I've had quite a few of them where I went against really every essence of what I had known to be true or what I had grown to believe. And so at 14 and a half, I left my mom, told on her. She was convicted for sexual abuse. And, it was a tough road. And then by 21, I was in an arranged marriage with my, now ex-husband. And I had gotten to a place in that marriage. I was about 2 years into that marriage, and I adored that man. I loved that man with every fiber of my being. But I knew that I was gay. I knew that I didn't really believe in the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses. I knew that I was never fully going to accomplish what I really wanted to accomplish in my life, which would be so much more than me if I stayed. And so I attempted to leave, and then that got thwarted immediately. And my husband at the time, he called my family and his family, and they came over and they read me Bible scriptures and prayed with me and tried to convince me that leaving would be the worst mistake of my life, and where am I going to go, and oh, you're not going to survive, blah, blah, blah. Well, 6 months later, I got another opportunity to leave, and I took that opportunity. And I did a great escape and moved across the country without knowing anybody at all. And that was really difficult because shortly after, I was shunned by everybody that I knew. And my good God, talk about a identity crisis, or talk about feelings of self-doubt, because I was questioning every belief, every thought, every feeling, every single idea that I've ever had to date, because I had to walk away from my entire family because I was gay, and they shunned me because I was gay. And so it took me years. And I know some people go, oh, well, you're still young, It took me years to get to a place where I could even balance out even a level or a measure of self-confidence. I didn't even know what that looked like. And it took me a while to get even remotely to where I felt comfortable sharing my own beliefs, or to where I felt comfortable making decisions. And I've noticed certain behaviors that I've had over the years where I'm not very good at making decisions. I mean, I could blame it on my zodiac chart. Us Libras, we can't make a decision. But in reality, the very essence of my own experiences are what bring into question my own beliefs. And learning to overcome that means that I had to find value in myself. And I had to see that I was competent. I had to feel into my own abilities. And it was a daily routine for a long time to kind of overcome certain feelings that I've had. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm healed, because I have those feelings of self-doubt that still come up. They still creep up, and it can be very hard to overcome them. But I love what I do. I help a lot of people on a daily basis. I get to sit with people of all different walks of life, all around the world, and read their emotional states, their trauma, and help them come to new awarenesses and help them work through emotions. And it's so powerful. It is so transformative. And I'm so grateful to have that opportunity. But I would be lying if I said that I was completely and utterly healed. I would be lying if I said that I didn't struggle with self-doubt. It does come in, and it's a tough doozy to work through it. But through healthy self-care routines, through healthy boundaries. Over the years, I've gotten better and better and better. And even in the last couple of months, I have noticed a difference in that I don't want to tell everyone what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. And I think it's kind of ironic. The more that I listen to my own intuition, the more that I'm successful. Like, I'll give you an example. Last week, I got this feeling before class, like it was about noon, and I got this feeling of I need to cancel class. And so I canceled class. And then like 5 of the people that were in that class came to me and they're like, oh my God, I'm so happy you canceled class. I wasn't feeling good, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's not a coincidence. I'll have these moments where like I'll really listen to my intuition. I had somebody tell me a while back when I started my window washing business. I had a window washing business for 11 years. And in that time, I had one of the most biggest contracts in the valley of Phoenix, Arizona. And I did a lot of window washing. Like, I mean, I was working 7 days a week. I probably should have hired people, but I was very greedy and I wanted to, like, again, overachieve to make up for my lack of confidence in myself. And so in the process of getting that contract, though, I was listening to my own intuition. I was not listening to anyone else, because everyone that I had known at that moment, they were all W-2 owners. Like, they all had owners, W-2 job people, like, who work 9-to-5 jobs, and they're in the corporate world or whatever the case is. And they're kind of stuck in that pattern of behavior. Well, I was self-employed, a contractor, and I was not going to listen to other people. But the moment that I would listen to people, I noticed that I was not going where I wanted to be at. And the moment that I stopped listening to everyone else's advice and just started doing what felt right for me, I started achieving way more stuff and making way more money. And to me, at that moment, that was what I identified with as success. And then it came to the point where it was time for me to let go of the window washing business and go full time with my spiritual business. And I had known for a year that that was going to happen. And I was so scared. I mean, we're talking like terrified, okay? Like, I knew that was going to happen. I didn't know how it was going to look, and I didn't know how I was going to be able to do it, but I was for it. You know, I mean, my spiritual business had been a side hustle for a few years, and I don't really like know how to handle that. And so what ended up happening was, it was a make or break moment. I had a moment where I kind of came to a realization of it was time to let go, and it was time to end the contract with my window washing stuff and begin full-time service as a spiritual psychic medium and past life regression therapist. And I had a lot of studies under my belt at that point, a couple successful mentorships, and it was time for me to take that, leap of faith. And in that moment, I had people in my ear going, oh, just wait on it, just think about it. You don't know yet what you really want to do. Just wait, because they were thinking from a stability standpoint, they were thinking about their personal experience with the workforce. So they were telling me what I should do based on their own experience. And I was thinking, my intuition says I got to do this. My spirit team, man, I had dead people coming in for days saying, you're about to pop off. You're about to go into full-time service. And they were telling me all kinds of stuff. And I was like, they're right. I need to listen to them. But I was scared. I still did it. And again, it paid off, deeply paid off. And now I sit here and I have a nice life. And I want to say that right now, right off the bat. To me, I'm not about having everything, like, I don't want all these glorious, like, shiny objects or anything like that. I'm pretty simple, but I like my time. I get to travel wherever I want to go and work from wherever I travel. I get to kind of take on wonderful opportunities because I have more of a schedule that makes me available to do that. I'm able to, practice heavier amounts of self-care. I'm able to do seminars and study, and my schedule is really kind of my free reign of what it is I want to do and how I want to do it. I mean, yes, clients, you got to factor in the appointment time frames that you set up with clients, but I can make my own schedule now. And I have a freedom that I didn't even understand was possible at 14 years old. Remember that story about me being 14 and really wanting my freedom? Well, since then, I've really kind of learned to discover that freedom. And that's almost in essence what the beauty is of this whole experience. And so if there's anything that I can tell you about self-doubt, it's that you're not going to have all the answers. You're not going to know what to do or how to do it the right way. You're not even going to know where you're going to be at in 10 years. All you can do is take one baby step forward after another. And sometimes you're going to absolutely know what you're doing. And other times you're going to be scared. And that's okay. But don't hold back from making decisions out of fear of what the outcome will be. Don't hold back from making decisions because you think that you don't have the ability to do it. You'll be surprised at the things that you can accomplish by just taking the opportunities that are in front of you. And before you know it, you'll walk yourself right out of self-doubt and right into strong levels of confidence, self-worth, happiness, and achievement.